Alrighty, guys. So Sister Veronica, Sister Ashlee from the Macabre Maiden Podcast, and Kevin from Jesus Unfollower Podcast and Community are all here today on Clergy Talk. Hi, guys. Typically, we talk about industry, mental health, music, and we are finally touching on religion, or the absence of it in my case, and all of us now, which is fantastic. So all of my guests today are, would you classify yourself as atheists or just non-believers? We'll start with Kevin.
Yeah, I would consider myself, I use the label agnostic atheist, which rubs some people the wrong way because they're like, you can't be both. But I say you can be, because agnostic is about knowledge. Atheism is about belief. So that's how I identify myself.
And then Ashlee, what about you, hon?
I would say it's actually pretty similar to that, really. I've flipped between atheist, agnostic for a long, long time. So yeah, actually, I think that's an even better way to describe it. So I just learned something about myself today.
Oh shit, that's why we're here. And Sister Bella, what about you, hon?
I'm in a weird place at the moment, actually. I don't want to say that I believe, like, I don't know. I'm in a weird place because I feel there's something out there, but I don't know if that's a God, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I'm still kind of in that transitioning thing where obviously I did leave the church, but I still feel there's something out in the universe, and I don't know what that is specifically.
That does make a lot of sense. And I need to apologize. I called you Sister Veronica when we first started.
It's okay.
Sister Bella.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all the same.
We are BFFs in real life, so I rarely ever call her Bella unless it's we're doing something like this. So if I slip again, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. I would also like to get into everyone's religious background and what made them leave that religion. And it could be, obviously, it's not just like this one thing. Be a number of things, but if you could give a general reason why, I think that would be really helpful. And I would love to start with Kevin, please.
Sure. So we, as a kid, I didn't go to church a lot. We went a couple times a month. We went to Baptist churches, and it was always just, something we did. Mom always wanted us in church. And I never had the thought that anybody didn't believe in God. As a kid, you just don't know that that's a thing. And so the first time I ever heard about somebody who didn't believe in God, it was in 8th grade, I think. It was 7th or 8th grade. I think 8th grade. It was my friend Justin and I were at the track. We went in gym class. People were running and stuff. We were sitting in the bleachers. And he made a comment that he was an atheist. I think that was the first time I ever heard that word. And he said that he gave Noah's Ark as an example of saying, like, this is something that couldn't possibly be true. And he's like, if that's not true, then what makes the rest of the Bible true? And that was the first time I ever thought, that's interesting. He has a point with that. But then in high school, we started going to a Pentecostal church. My family did. And it was a little more charismatic, the music was louder. People were running around the church and like crazy stuff, like really worshiping. And like, at first I was weirded out by it, but then I was all about it after. Well, the main reason I became all about it was because there was a production called Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that.
I've heard of this, yeah.
Yes, it's basically a scare tactic.
Sounds fucking insane.
It is fucking insane. It's like a scare tactic drama play that the church puts on of like, and you see your friends from the church are up there on stage. They're all acting in this, and it's like, what if you're drinking and then you get in a car wreck and everybody goes to hell, and it's like so theatrical. All these demons are running off like from off stage, grabbing the kids and dragging them to hell. And I was like, oh, I guess I should probably give my life to Jesus,
Oh my God.
Because at that time I was a Christian, but I wasn't really like I didn't consider myself like that saved, I guess. I wasn't all about it, but that sort of scared me into it. So like going
as
from
they wanted.
Exactly. And then it became a huge part of my life, to the point where I lost friends in my life. Like one of my high school best friends, I tried to tell him about how he was doing wrong in his life and preaching to him, and like our friendship dissolved. And I was probably about 16 when I really got into that church, and it was about 10 years of believing like that and like being all about it, having a relationship with God, talking to God, all those things I thought, and then there was like a split at my church. Sorry, this is kind of long-winded, but
no, it's very interesting.
Okay. So I was pretty close to the youth pastor at my church, and there was some sort of falling out with him and the pastor, and he like went to another church. I followed him there, and like they ended up moving to a different church that was further away, and I stopped going as much. So I was already starting to not go to church as often. And I was like, then I started to like just think about things and like think, why do I believe these things? But I still believed until one day at work, I would go walk laps around the building on breaks just to de-stress and stuff. And there was one guy who would be out there smoking, and he asked me if I believed in God. And I told him, yeah, that I was a Christian. And he told me that he used to be one. He used to preach and everything. But he wanted to go back to school, and his church was like really against him going back to college. They were saying like the devil was going to get a hold of his brain and all this stuff.
Oh my God.
Well, he ended up going anyways. And then like he was telling me about taking this religion class, learning about all the different religions of the world, and learning, he said that it just sort of hit him that all these people in different parts of the world believe differently. They all think that their God is the right God. And a light bulb just went off for me in that moment of like, if I were born somewhere else, I would believe totally differently. If my parents believed something else, I would believe totally differently. I know that it's not the case 100% of the time, but there's such a strong correlation of where you live, the people around you, what they believe, the people who raise you, what they believe, that you usually believe the same thing. It's not 100%, but it's probably like 80% of the time that's the case, And it just sort of, I became an atheist pretty quickly after that. That like cracked the foundation of my
sounds like
belief. Yeah. Yeah. And I stopped believing.
It sounds like it was at the right time in your life. There was something was already maybe like wavering, dwindling just a little bit. And it took that notion to, like you said, to really like crack that foundation of everything and get you to just expand your brain. I think a lot of times people, I've noticed in listening to other podcasts similar to yours or talking to people like you, is it's not just one thing, it's step by step things start to dissolve a bit, and then they have that big aha moment.
Yeah.
It's just like all your like neurotransmitters in your brains is like light up, and you're like, I know Kung Fu. Like it's like it just expands all of a sudden. And so I'm interested, Ashlee, in being a former Catholic, and then Bella as well. But we'll start with Ashlee. There's a lot of built-in guilt with Catholicism. That's like really that's how they get you. How they get you, and that's how they keep you in it. I'm wondering, how did you find your way out of Catholicism despite that?
It was a long time in the process. So to give a tiny bit of backstory, I was in Catholic school from elementary school all the way up to 8th grade. I wasn't forced to. I will caveat it by saying my parents were just they just wanted a good education. For them, that was like one of the only options in the area. So I never would blame my parents on any of this. My dad was a pretty devout Catholic, but he really wanted me to go with him, but he wasn't like pushy about it. So
Okay.
it was more just he wanted to hang out with me. So yeah, going based off of what you said a little bit there, like it is about the fear. We went to mass on every Tuesday and then Sundays, and did a lot of confessions in the not so dirty confession booth. It's really quite boring. Right, I know. Yeah, so I mean I did plenty of that, and it's like this fear, this driving factor that you're just like, oh my god, I have to go confess all my sins, and you're like writing them all down. You're like, crap, what am I gonna write down? Oh, I just said crap. Well, there's one. So the big catalyst for me, first of all, the principal of the school was just an awful, awful human being. I don't often throw the word evil around, and I don't really believe that there's evil people out there. It's just things that happen necessarily in their lives. But this person, she was evil in my honest to God opinion. She just was a terrible person. So to give a context about her, and this is important for later in the story, she was very openly homophobic and very openly just a nasty person to people she didn't like. And one instance that stuck out for me is a trans person who is currently, well, was unfortunately it passed away, but was trans, but at the time was gay. And that is important in the context because she would call him such awful names. And like one time we were just walking and he tripped and she just laughed her ass off. Blatantly, like it didn't matter to her that, you know, she was being an awful person, and you know, she's like still wants to collect money from the family, so wasn't gonna, you know, kick him out of the school or anything. Of course, got to get that money. And speaking of money, the big moment for me was I was pretty open-minded to a lot of it. We did a lot of like fun little plays and shows, and I was the Virgin Mary in one play. And
Ooh.
ooh.
Star roll.
Yes, the holier than thou. We did like Stations of the Cross reenactments, where in short, you go around, you do all the Stations of the Cross, and it's like fun to watch your friends get crucified. Come on down. It's great fun. So it was fun. There was a lot of like community and friends that I made during that time. And there was one bishop who, you know, when you read the textbook example of a good, holy person, that was this man. He was an honest to God, just kind, humble, caring person. He drove a beater car that was on its last leg, not like a lot of the priests and stuff that purchase like new BMWs, Jaguars, Teslas nowadays. He literally drove this car to the ground his whole life. He advocated for us as students and was really open-minded to talking to us, didn't care at all if a student was, you know, gay or presenting as gay or lesbian, anything along those lines, especially in middle school, because it's such a interesting time to figure oneself out. And it can be wild. You just don't know exactly, you know, you got hormones going everywhere. And so it was nice having somebody that actually just didn't really care who you were and just wanted you to do the right thing. And in Catholic Church, that's kind of, in my opinion, hard to find someone like that. Even these days, it's especially difficult. But a little trigger warning to a piece of this story. Because he was such an advocate for the students, he wanted us to be able to go places, go on field trips, see things like most kids should. But the principal, as we discussed, is not a good person, extremely greedy, and hated that it took away money from her pockets, essentially. So after about a year of him being you know, just a good person, having fun masses, like I actually looked forward to going to mass and really enjoyed it. Actually, his sermons were always fun. He did stuff for like the kids and try to like, you know, make the language a little bit more kid friendly, if you will, rather than hell and damnation. It was putting it in context of being a good person. Is that was his mission. And he was the one person that really had me believing all of this. But after about a year of him being there, the principal and her son, again, big trigger warning here. Back in the early 2000s, computers were really new. So an IT person was very important to have at a school because we learned computers. Mavis Beacon teaches typing. Good times back then. And her son was just as sleazy as she was.
Oh.
And in this case, the son put child pornography on the
Child
priest's
porn,
computer.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Framing him essentially, and then outing him to the Catholic Church. They said he was gay and a pervert and all this other stuff. And obviously, the community is going to be outraged. They really are. I mean, any parent's going to not ever want this bishop to be near their child, rightfully
Right.
so. And after doing all of this stuff, he was excommunicated, sent back to the Philippines. Because they deported him and all that other stuff, and just literally never heard from again. And a lot of that comes from my parents who worked in the kitchen. They really loved serving kids lunch and stuff there, and they were basically blackmailed to keep quiet about a lot of the stuff because they knew, and they kept trying to tell people, but like no one would believe them because the principal said my parents are awful people. They were stealing from the school when it wasn't them in the slightest. So that was the moment my faith died. And it didn't just die, it was dead, cremated, hammered into a coffin, nailed, thrown into a river, and it was just never coming back. And that sucked because he really was, in my opinion, a very good person. And just to see someone so nice, so good, so, in my opinion, pure, just thrown away because he wasn't as greedy as she wanted was the worst, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like if you don't uphold their status quo, you're out, and they're going to find a way to get you out of there. And if you appear to have more status, more power, more love, more adoration, they're going to find a way to corrupt that and get you the fuck out of there. I've heard of that happening a lot, actually. I have some clients who have worked within churches and have maybe not as severe as what happened here, but have had similar situations happen that have caused them to leave said church and really rethink the likelihood that corruption is usually going to follow around in whatever church they're in. And speaking of which, I would love to hear from Sister Bella about how how she got out of the Catholic Church as well, because there's a lot of corruption going on there, and they corrupt people too, sadly.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it comes from a personal standing. Like Ashlee, I did go to a Catholic. Well, obviously, first I was baptized against my will as a baby. I didn't want to talk about that. Yeah, because it's just like everyone brings up that argument of like, well, when you're a baby, you don't have a say of being baptized, compared to like other people who get baptized later in life. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, so I've been a Roman Catholic, or I was a Roman Catholic for the majority of my life. My parents were all Roman Catholic. My mother was the more devout one in the family, and she still is. My father, even though he was also from a Roman Catholic background, he also was not very religious either. He didn't go to church. Like, if he had to, it was because there was like a wedding being taken place at the church, and he would disgruntledly, obviously, like, all right, I'll go. But and in the I never was like forced to go, but it was also like, okay, Mom, my mom would go, okay, we're gonna go to church, and I'd be like, okay, just all happy, like the idea of like just dressing up and like going to Jesus's house and having that whole relationship with him. But yeah, anyway, so then obviously, like I was saying, I went to Catholic school like Ashlee between kindergarten to 8th grade. So that was kind of my whole world too. And like, I was an altar server for most of my youth, because I love doing that. I love participating in the mass and having that also relationship with God and Jesus, and mostly Mary. my mother and my grandmother had a devout love for Mary. So that's where my devoutness came from too. But yeah, so once I got to high school, which was a public high school, it was a big shift for me. So I was seeing things you obviously don't see in Catholic school. So I was starting to question things there because I ended up going to Sunday school, basically, because my mother wanted me to be confirmed in the church. And that's when I started technically questioning things of that. I don't know. It just felt like so generic and so cult-like going to those confirmation classes, because obviously they're being run by volunteers who are just significant figures in the church, or like they say significant, but they're just random people. They're just like, yeah, I'll volunteer and help out. I will say my teachers did the best they could. They were both males, so they were a little biased on things. But yeah, I mean, I went through the confirmation classes, but I was still questioning things. Like, I was around more, like mostly it was LGBTQ. That's where that was coming from. And I felt like I wanted to participate because obviously, like, at that time, I didn't realize I was gay. I was more of an ally, but I also felt like, because of like where I come from, I'm from Massachusetts, and my community was like accepting, but also like kind of closed-minded because I was in a backwoods kind of an area. Mm-hmm. So some people weren't as accepting as others compared to like being an ally for LGBTQ people, basically. Especially in my little town, it was just podunk backwoods, like guys wear flannel every day. They drive snowmobiles everywhere in the winter. Yeah, right. So yeah, so that's when I was like kind of starting to like question things, because I ended up having friends who were gay, and they would be like, "Oh, come to LGBTQ club," and I never did, just because like also my family was very like protective of me and kept me in this like little bubble still. And then I get to college, and that's when also my faith was being in question, like having a comfortable background. And, you know, I told like not like roommates, but like my floor mates that I was Catholic. And then they realized I was like, oh, wait, she's actually cool. She's all right. And then that's when I started hanging around them more. I actually went to the LGBTQ like club events in college, getting to know more people and having those open conversations, things like that. So fast forward a little bit. I didn't mention this, but my grandfather, who I was very close with, was also very, very devout as a Catholic as well. And he eventually got sick with cancer back in 2013. So going through that was scary enough, but then, you know, to see someone disintegrating like that and going through that was really tough. So when he passed away, that's when my faith was starting to really get into question, because it's like you have people come up to you and, you know, say, oh, it happened for a reason. You know, God has a plan for everything. And, you know, I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I guess he had a plan, but that doesn't make my grief feel any better.
Exactly.
You know?
It's not comforting to you.
No, exactly. And it's just like, it's not going to bring my grandfather back. Like, it's not. And then come a year later, I lost my father unexpectedly. And the same thing happened again. God has a plan for everything. You know, Jesus is taking care of him. He's not far from you. You know, just believe in God. He'll make everything better. And I'm just like,
fuck you. Yeah, exactly.
You. Like, that's when that instance, and then a more positive instance I'm going to talk about in a second, kind of made me realize, fuck the church. Because it's just, I don't want to hear that. You know, if there was a God, he wouldn't have taken my father and my grandfather away from me at 24 and 23 respectively. Mm-hmm. And that just made me sick to my stomach. Like, I still went to church to support my mother, but I wasn't even listening anymore. I didn't care. I didn't want to hear it. Even if like the sermons were inspiring from the priest, like it was going over my head. Like I didn't care. Because, and I will say, there was, I don't know if you guys know Stephen Fry, the comedian, the British comedian. So he did an interview. You probably might be familiar with it. He did an interview, like how he is an atheist. And I remember a specific quote from him of, if there is a God, why is he giving children cancer? You know, like, why would a God do this? And that kind of stayed with me and stuck with me. And it came back into my head around that time. So that's kind of when I made the decision. I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. I hope that all made sense. It's just a hodgepodge of things.
Yeah, you gave us a really nice rundown on that. So thank you very, very much. Just quick background on me. My mom was Catholic and then converted to Lutheran. My dad was never quite religious. I was baptized, according to my dad, just as fire insurance. I'm sure you guys understand that phrase of just in case, you know, that's what he told me. And of course was baptized against my will, as Bella said. I was sent to a Lutheran preschool where they tried very early on to indoctrinate all these little children. And I really don't know what it was about me and my brother, but my parents tried the same thing with both of us, and we were 7 years apart. Both of us had really took pause when we had to go. I don't know the word for these things anymore. Everything's kind of left my brain. When we had to go listen to the priest do a sermon or whatever in the little church that was connected to the preschool. And both of us in particular, it's funny, Kevin, you said your friend Justin, I think, had some problems with the whole Noah's Ark thing. That was the same thing that my brother Justin brought up, and the same thing that I questioned as well. And I think in particular, I said something like, wouldn't all the animals like fight or eat each other? Or, you know, it was something along, like something an innocent little kid would say. And my brother said the same thing. 7 years later, I said the same thing. And then I think they went, you know what? Our kids just aren't into this. Totally independent thinkers from very, very early age. And the church just couldn't grab us for whatever reason. And so I grew up with complete lack of religion in my life. Whatever kind of spirituality my mom has, she's always kept it to herself, because my brother and I, we didn't mean to, but we would kind of like pounce on her sometimes and start debates and try to, because we, you know, when you love someone, you you want to show them the way. And so I understand in a way why religious people do the same thing, you know, to people that they quote unquote love and care about. But we were just trying to get her to think rationally and logically. That's it. However, because I grew up with no religion in my life, religious people like you, when I was growing up, were so weird to me. Like, I think from a very young age, I saw the cultiness of it all. I saw that they were trying to manipulate children. And this is as a child. I would have friends invite me to like Bible study weekends and like kids Christian get-together parties, and I don't even know what to call them anymore. Like I said, they would have raffles, they'd have puppet shows and all this shit. And I remember sitting there like, this is really weird. And I can see them trying to manipulate me and get me. And there's a couple times I had some friends who were religious, whether they were Hindu, Mormon, Catholic, I mean, whatever, so many different religions I was exposed to, fortunately. And so that really helped shape my worldview of what you said, Kevin, of why is my religion the only one that's right? Right. And depending on where I live, that's the religion of, you know, that culture, and why are they wrong? So it just doesn't make any sense. And so fortunately, at a young age, I was exposed to this ideology. It was probably my brother being much older than me, and probably being like, So yeah, I guess I got lucky, and so that leads me to my question, Kevin. And then after that, Bella has a couple questions for you, and then Ashlee has a few questions for you. You have a really awesome podcast, which I talked about earlier, and you've also built this atheist community. People can find you on Instagram and TikTok at Jesus Unfollower.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you're doing.
By the way.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. I love what you're doing, in that you are finding humorous ways to help people get past qualms they might have with I'm thinking about leaving my faith, I'm feeling guilty about this, or I just really need an outlet to help me through this, because as I understand from everyone I've spoken to who has become formerly religious, there can be a lot of trauma built up there.
Yeah.
And before we get into talking about your podcast, I would like to read something that you just posted, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
So you get a lot of little turds in your DMs.
I do.
Trying to fight with you and instigate shit, and you always have
All
the
the time.
best replies, which I love. They'll just go off on you, and you're like, "Are you okay, man?" I love that. But so someone sent you a message this morning that says, "You're not healing anyone with your message. Take your page down as literal blasphemy." And then you put up a little comparison, and you said the very next message I opened was, "Hey, Jesus Unfollower, I don't know if you'll read this, but I just wanted to say a huge thank you for everything that you've done. When I was 10, I got forced into a Christian cult by my aunt. I lived with her for 3 years while my parents were out of the country. It left me messed up, always turning to the Christian God when things went wrong. Your content was a lifeline. You've helped me break free from that brainwashing and start to heal. I'm finally living a better, more honest life thanks to you. You've made a massive difference in my life. Keep doing what you're doing. It's changing lives." And I fully agree with that. I know, right? I'm like, I'm gonna cry a little bit. And with that being said, they were talking about they were forced in this when they were a child. My question to you is, how important and significant do you feel it is for these Christian Catholic religions to grab people when they're young? Because what I see is, and I was taking notes while you guys were all talking, is that if you're giving roles to children when they're young, like, you get to play a Virgin Mary, you get to do this, you get to that, you're encouraging these kids to enter this land of make-believe. Again, I was making these notes while you guys are talking. You encourage them to foster this, all these magical things happened a long time ago, and now I have this faith. And then when they're adults, clamp down on that and go, yes, but this is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you discourage any other thought-provoking discourse after that. And so I know that I'm getting real wordy with my question, but what have you experienced with that? And how important do you think it is for these religions to grab them while they're really young?
I think it's super important as children and young adults, like, because when you're 18 to 20 years old, you think you know everything, and you're super impressionable at that age too. I think that churches really try to go after people around that age, because you're just getting out of high school and you're easily influenced. But kids too. I feel like you used the word lucky a minute ago, and I feel lucky that I wasn't super indoctrinated as a child, because I think it made it easier for me to reason my way out of it. Where I see a lot of people who just believe it from the day they're born, and they're going to church. Like, I see 5-year-old kids with their hands up worshiping at church, and the parents just celebrating it, and just the kids don't even know 2 + 2, and they already think that they speak to the creator of the universe, And so it's like they just dig those talents in at such a young age, and just and then just inject a little bit of fear too of, oh, by the way, if you don't believe it, that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think it's important. I think if none of us could even heard about religion until we were 18, those numbers would be a lot lower as how many people actually believe this stuff, you know. But they just tell you as if there's opinions as facts, you know, as when you're a kid. And I feel lucky that I, you know, went to public school, that we didn't go to church like crazy a lot, and that I was able to, you know, not be that be 100% of my life like it is for a lot of people when they're young.
Sometimes that's all that they have. And, you know, the whole notion of there's this ever loving, all accepting sky daddy too, you know, is really fucking weird, but I can understand that can be very comforting to a child as well. And so, yeah, I think that's another way that they're able to snag kids too. And you mentioned that you weren't super indoctrinated as a child, and so you feel like that was a bit easier for you to break free of that. And so in that way, you don't really have religious trauma, so to speak, except for this one story that I would love for you to tell that involves your mouth.
Oh no. Oh my God.
I think the girls would love to hear this. This is hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, you can't just talk about that and not share.
So, oh my God. So at this church that I went to, they would bring in these guest evangelists sometimes, these traveling preachers who are like, think they know everything and think that they have a, you know, I got a direct line to God. And these freaking, like, we would go to restaurants and they would just act like, you know, everybody was there to see them, and just weird people, very self-absorbed. But this one guy, he's from Kentucky, and he got up in front of the church and he preached his whole sermon. He did an altar call for people to come up to the altar. And it's one of those all-encompassing altar calls where it's like, they'll say, you know, if you don't believe in Jesus, get down here. And a few people go, and then they start getting more broad and more broad. Like, if you have 2 arms, you know, come down to the altar. And so everybody's down there, right? And then he just starts walking around, and he's like singling people out and picking people out of the crowd. And he's walking around with his microphone. He tells my friend Andrew, he's like, son, you're going to break free from this addiction to nicotine. The dude's never smoked in his life, right?
Like,
so that should have been my first clue that it was bullshit. But
oh God.
Then he comes to me, and I'm like, oh God, this is my nightmare as an introvert, as somebody who just doesn't want to be in this situation at all. He's like, what's holding you back from getting closer to God, or something like that? And I was like, you know, I'm not being bold enough in my faith and witnessing to my friends.
Oh yeah.
And he goes, stick out your tongue. And I'm like, what? You know, stick out your tongue, son.
Oh God.
So I stick out my tongue. He grabs it with his hand.
Wow.
No.
And he said, and then he goes, now repeat after me. I will not be ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he puts the microphone to my face while he's still holding my tongue. And I'm like, I will not be ashamed.
Oh my God.
It's so embarrassing. And every time that preacher ever came back, I did not go to church that day, because he came back sometimes and I was like, not this guy.
Because it's just like a power move that they do that, because they know they can.
Yeah.
So bad.
You just don't want another man's fingers on your tongue, you know?
No.
I mean, unless you're into that kind of thing.
Probably not at that age, but it's like, you know, at that moment, you're just like, and this is disgusting. Yeah, I agree with you, Sister Bella, about like the whole power move thing as well. This guy's just moving through and saying it how it is, and no one's gonna be like, but I don't smoke, bro. I mean, I'm sure if they did, he would have pushed their head and but pushed him down on the ground
and said, "The devil's in you," like that.
Yes. Sort of on that note of cat's got your tongue and being silenced. I believe Bella has a question for you.
I do. So I mean, personally, I've struggled with this, especially coming off of leaving the church. But was there ever times where you felt you couldn't talk about your religious background after you had left the church with people?
Well, I don't know if I felt like I couldn't talk about it. I guess kinda. I didn't really talk about it for a long time. Like,
Right.
I became an atheist in 2009. I didn't start talking about it on social media until 2019. So, like,
Oh, okay.
I went a decade of just kind of being indifferent.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't believe, but I didn't care if people believed. I just didn't talk about it that much.
Mhm.
And several years ago, I guess it's about 5 years ago now, I was at a company Christmas party, and I had just broken up with my girlfriend because of our religious differences. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, that's the whole reason that was kind of the catalyst for me starting to make content, but that's a different story. But I went to the company Christmas party, and one of the guys' wives was like, "Where's your girlfriend?" And I was like, "Oh, we broke up." And I had had a few drinks by then, and she like asked me why we broke up, and I told her that I was an atheist. And like, you would have thought that I told her that I murdered somebody with the look that she gave me.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
just wild. It's just
The betrayal.
that Bible Belt, like, nobody, you just don't hear the word atheist that much around here. You don't really, I mean, there are atheists, but it's such a shock to people, you know? And so I don't know. I kind of just went a long time not really talking about it very much at all.
It doesn't sound like there were a lot of people to talk to about it until you started going online and maybe finding a bit more of your community and opening up.
Yeah. I guess, there were some OG atheist YouTubers back in the day, but I didn't really watch those very much or anything. And when I started posting on Instagram, that was the first place I started posting, just because I didn't want to post on my personal accounts, really. I just wanted a place to kind of vent about things. And then, like, so I just kind of posted stupid things. I was like making up fake Bible verses that were stupid. And people would start liking those, and like I would get comments, and I'm like, I didn't realize that there were other people out there who were like kind of had the same thoughts as me. And then it would just, like, the more I posted, the more people could relate and comment. And then I saw like all these other accounts start springing up of faith deconstruction accounts and atheism accounts, and I started making like real life friends and stuff online. And so it was just really cool and unexpected, because I didn't get into this to be a content creator or anything like that. I was just posting dumb stuff, and then suddenly you just like start having all these connections, and people like, thank you for this. Like you were saying, that DM I got today, that kind of stuff fuels me to keep going, because sometimes it gets hard when you get a ton of comments of people just like criticizing you, and then they start going ad hominem and talking about your looks and just yada yada.
I've seen that on there.
Yeah. And so like then you get those comments, and it's like, it's just really, I just know it's important, whether it's me or other accounts that do similar things. It's important. I try to do a little bit of a unique spin with just humor mainly, because I know that there are a lot of accounts that are the more serious accounts. They talk about the more serious discussions. They have, interviews with people, and that content is needed too. But my goal is just to make people laugh if they're having a shit day, and that's kind of it.
And you're really, really good at it. And just from the DMs that you post, you can tell that you've really helped a ton of people. And I do really, laughter is the best medicine. As someone who's been through a lot of shit in my life, I can absolutely 100% say, yes, it is.
It is.
Yes,
my favorite quote is, laughter is an instant vacation. Just because I think that's so true. It just makes you, like, you forget about things for a minute, when you laugh. It's a Milton Berle quote, but that's my favorite.
Oh, Milton Berle, rest in peace.
Yeah.
Now, Bella, I believe you have another question for him that's very important, actually. I like this question.
Yeah, let me pull it up on my phone again because my memory's terrible. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely looked at your profile a little bit, Kevin. I haven't like deep delved into it, but it really is very much a booster for people who are leaving the church or want to leave the church. And just to, kind of laugh about it too, of being like, oh my God, all of these years of thinking these things, it just comes down to just a concept that was created by another person, and just to like have a laugh about that, like you were saying. So my other question is, what advice do you have for those who may be questioning their faith or who want to leave the church?
Yeah, I just think questions in general are good. Just questions. Ask more questions. Ask yourself questions. Ask the people around you questions. And that's the beauty of social media, even though people trash it all the time.
Right.
It gives you the ability to like find people who are asking the similar questions to you or giving the answers to those questions. So I just think that that's important. I think, watching debates is healthy, so you can see both sides of the coin. Watching, like if you're really questioning and not sure, watch some call-in shows. I like watching atheist call-in shows because people will call in, give their arguments about, why they think God exists or whatever, and then there'll be the rebuttal and just that back and forth. Just get different perspectives. But I just think just questions are healthy. And for me, there's no like the right landing spot. Everybody thinks that I want everybody to become an atheist. That's not true. If you question things and your answer is still, oh, I think there's a God, then cool. That's fine too. But it's just healthy to ask yourself why you believe.
Right.
Why do I believe this? For what reason? And just keep asking why.
So stay curious, I think, is a really important message that you're putting out there. I couldn't help but think about when I was in high school, I had a friend named Nita who was Muslim. And then I had a friend named Tara who was Hindu. And the three of us would all hang out. And I would ask them questions because, just curious kid. And it was really insightful and interesting to hear about other people's religions. And of course, I didn't believe any of it. I had a friend who was Mormon too. And that guy was really weird, by the way. And very repressed kid, poor guy. I'd ask him questions as well. And yeah, it just talk to different people and broaden your horizons a bit. And I think you'll find that also you're not so lonely. Because I do see that religion tries to fill some gaps too for people that might be feeling lonely, not feeling some resolve in their life and just need to fill it with something. So yeah, be more social, ask questions, damn it.
Yeah.
Speaking of communities, I believe Ashlee has a question for you.
Yeah, so like one thing with when I was in schools, we had this program called Awana, and it was like Girl Scout, Boy Scouts for Catholics.
Oh God.
Like we got these like little like pins and stuff, and I read the Bible in Latin and everything, and like I went all in on it because I like they were like these little buttons, and they're like,
yeah, you got
bedazzled.
a special little button out of it.
And I'm a kid, and I love gold stars and bedazzled garbage. I found my collection, and I'm like, okay, I could see why younger me was into this, like bedazzle the hell out of it. So it kind of plays into my question of like how that was a huge community builder for me. And later when I was trying with friends, like I had a great time in the Methodist church, like with the community. And so, I guess I'm sort of curious is like, how is like faith, or in your case, absence of, played a role in that community? And did you find yourself kind of missing that community intertwinement?
Yeah, when I stopped believing, like, it's funny the comments that you get of people saying that you just wanted to sin. You left because you wanted to sin. And for me, I'd loved church unless people were grabbing my fucking tongue.
Exactly.
I liked
So
I liked
weird.
church. I liked that community. I had a lot of friends there, and yeah, when that just like the faucet kind of shut off from that community just went away, and I think that's a real thing for a lot of people. And I guess part of me has struggled, since then to really find community. I think a lot of people are kind of in that boat. That's why I love the online space so much.
Yeah.
Especially for people who are in really religious areas, because a lot of the people around them are that way, and you just don't have that physical community there. But the online space is it's a good, it might not be quite the same, but I think you can get a lot of fulfillment out of connecting with people who have similar interests, whether it's about religion or not. Just connecting with people who have similar interests and similar beliefs or lack thereof is big.
Yeah.
So that's something that could help you feel a bit more fulfilled if you were to leave a religion, especially a lot of times I'm noticing people are leaving whole communities behind.
Yeah.
It's
a culture shock.
Right. As I understand it, if you're part of a church, that's your family, like that's your community. That's where you get your social interaction from and everything. And so to back away from that and have nothing, it sounds like it's really important to go and try to find something else that can help alleviate that feeling of I have nothing now.
Right.
So Kevin, you've built your own community, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I think it is possible, and you see a lot of people do it too, where they have such a strong belief, they leave that community and then they jump right into another religion. And that's not necessarily wrong either, but I think that's why it's good to just stay curious and just ask yourself questions. Maybe that religion's not for you either, but I've seen that happen for sure. If people leave and then they, go into something else, because there's something inside that, you just want that community. If you lost something so significant and substantial to you, like that's a big void, void, especially if God went with it,
Oh yeah.
You had God and community and all this stuff in here, and then it's just you leave and God's not real, and I'm not around any of the same people anymore.
And now I don't have any friends.
Yeah. Dang. I guess maybe I should have just kept believing.
You know what? I'm drawing a parallel here. By the way, ladies, Kevin doesn't know anything about the band Ghost. But I think I've sent him a couple things and he was like, you should check this out. It's really fun. So I'm drawing a parallel here. There are a lot of atheists, ex-religious people that go from being hardcore Catholic or hardcore in the church to leaving that faith and then getting hardcore into the band Ghost, because it's this theatrical band that's this tongue-in-cheek mega satanic church. No one's a Satanist in it. It's this whole theatrical thing. And so a lot of people will jump from one thing to being super obsessed with ghosts. And so it's really interesting. I just connected that right now.
Yeah.
I was like, jumping from one obsession to the next or whatever.
I don't know anything about them, but I don't know anything about ghosts, but I've heard a couple of the songs. I'll have my phone on shuffle or whatever, everything, or a certain band's radio station or whatever, and then a ghost song will come on, and I know that I've favorited a couple of them. Damn, I like this song.
Good for
but
you,
I haven't really taken the time to see what they're all about.
There is a whole community that comes along with it if you want it to, and again, a lot of those people are atheists, and they've come from a similar background as Ashlee and Bella. And Ashlee, my dear, you had another question for Kevin.
Yeah. You should, by the way, DM him the Jesus He Knows Me music video.
Oh yeah, he'll love it.
Great start. That is a great start. If you're a fan of Genesis, it's a cover of that song, but it's fantastic, and you're gonna love it. I promise.
Yes.
It's so good. Okay, so my other question. So a lot of people think you kind of touched on it earlier when you were talking a little bit about how, like, you know, you're in that Bible Belt and you get that shock of like, oh, an atheist, like the pearl clutching. A lot of people think, okay, well, you're just an atheist, meaning, you know, you have no ethical, moral values whatsoever. You just want to go and commit all the 7 deadly sins at once.
Stupid.
All of them at once. No, it's so one thing that comes to mind to me is like, you know, a lot of people think that you're just going off willy-nilly doing whatever you want, when really it's you know, how do you tie in like the ethical, moral values outside of the framework of like the religious doctrine? Meaning, you know, as soon as you left that community we were talking about, how did you find yourself getting that sense of right, wrong, compassion, community? You're talking about that culture shock. Like, how did you find yourself being like, oh, okay, so I probably shouldn't murder people. That's still probably good across the board.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, you know,
So,
I think the golden rule, I think, predates Christianity, you know, of doing unto other people as you would want them to do to you.
True.
And that's, it's kind of scary if you think about, like, because people will say objective morality, you know, God is the source, but it's like you need a God to tell you that murder is wrong.
Yeah. Right.
And a God who can't even follow his own rules, by the way.
Yeah, by the way. Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. It's like somebody, I think it was Ricky Gervais, somebody asked him, like, you know, why don't you murder as many people as you want then, since you don't have that objective moral standard? And he's like, I do. I murder exactly how many people I want. And that's 0, you know? So I don't know. It's just empathy. And it, you know, for me, I deconstructed my religious beliefs a long time before I deconstructed my political beliefs. That's something that came later for me. And I think it's usually the opposite for a lot of people, where they will sort of like change, like they look at things differently politically, and then, you know, start to deconstruct their faith. But for me, it was the other way around. And I've like, just the longer I live, the more, I guess, compassion I have for other people, the more empathy. And I don't know, I just don't think you need a God to tell you that not to hurt other people. Like, you know, you can believe whatever, but as long as it's not hurting people, you know, that's fine, I think.
Definitely.
That is a really good way of putting it, and I do appreciate that, because it's always, you know, as I've grown up without religion in my life, and I've heard that there's a term for it as well. It's like atheist. I don't know if I'm saying it right. I just don't care, you know. And people be like, wait, so you don't believe in anything? And it's like, no, it's not that I just don't believe, I just don't care, you know. And then, you know, the follow-up question is always, well, then where do you get like your morals and your values from, you know? And I don't know, my parents trying to like teach me to be a good person, and then kind of taking cues from society as well. Like I don't need, like, we don't need Sky Daddy, and we don't need a book telling us what's right and what's wrong. Like, we can choose for ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would like to, first of all, thank everyone for coming in today and sharing your background when it comes to religion and asking such poignant questions. But I would really like to end this with some humor when it comes to the Bible specifically, you know, because we are speaking to Jesus Unfollower. And I just want to make sure that everyone has their Bible quote ready. Does everyone have a Bible quote ready?
Hell yeah. Yeah. I'm so ready.
Okay. So we will end with Kevin, because he's got that like sultry Southern voice. So I would love to end with him. And because I am the host, I'm going to fucking start this. So let's go, guys. All right.
Fucking get it.
Let me have some water, please. Hold on.
Get it. Y'all are not ready.
All right.
People at home.
Blow on my garden, that its fragrance may spread abroad. Let my lover come into his garden and taste its choice fruits. 4:16. All right. Bella, please.
God.
Oh, God.
I'm not following that.
Also, I'm pretty sure yours, Ash, and his, Kevin, came from like what's quoted as the sexiest part of the Bible, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think mine is too. I'm not sure, but we're going to find out. Okay. So this is 8:10. Do you want me to read this sexy?
Yeah, read it sexy. Everyone has to read it slow and sexy.
Okay.
I'm ready.
The least sexiest person you ever met.
No.
Okay. I am a wall, and my breasts are like towers. Thus, I have become in his eyes like one bringing contentment.
Wow.
I can only bite my lip so hard.
That's the sexiest way to describe breasts, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Also, it's like I didn't get to talk about my gay experience, so I'm like, this is the gay experience right here.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Oh God. That's
and
amazing.
Ashlee, what do you have for us?
Okay, so this is from Ezekiel 23, 19-20. Yet she became more and more promiscuous as she recalled the days of her youth when she was a prostitute in Egypt. There she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emission was like that of horses. I love her. She's amazing. I love her so much. She knows what she wants.
This is iconic behavior right there.
God. I love that
they didn't know what she likes.
They didn't have anything to compare stuff to, so there was a lot of comparisons to like animals and buildings and like, flowers and shit. Oh, that's great.
Towers and donkey parts.
And horses' emissions.
I know, that part sent me.
All right, Kevin, we're going to end this with you. If you could please read your passage or whatever they call it, your verse, very slowly and sexy, please. We're listening.
All right, this comes from Song of Solomon 5:4. My beloved put his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved for him.
That was great. You should do like some ASMR, Kevin, because that sounds real good.
ASMR, just read the Bible.
Oh my God.
ASMR Bible. Hey, there we go.
I mean, you don't even have to make these things up like you were doing before.
No.
Like, these are just there organically.
I actually got this idea from Kevin's podcast. He has read the most fucking ridiculous verses on his podcast, and I can't remember which one it was, but I'll remember way later. But I was dying laughing on my way to work, and I was like, "Oh, we have to incorporate something like this.
Oh yeah,
but make it sexy."
Oh yeah, I like that.
And with that being said, are you putting out a country album? By the way, you have you've made your Jesus country single.
I'm
fucking hilarious. Okay.
Yeah, I got one song. First song is the single's dropping on July 19th. I don't know when this is coming out, but yeah, I'll be working on some more just really stupid country song with a little Christian inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeehaw.
Oh, we'd love to hear it. Yeah, your song, from what I've heard so far, is hilarious. Thank you for doing that. We all need that tongue-in-cheek fun stuff. Oh, and again, thank you all for being here today and taking part in this. You're all amazing. And I don't know how to end it. I mean, I could just say Hail Satan or something.